What's up, everybody? You know what day it is. It's time for your next dose of Warrior Wednesday with your host, the Wounded Warrior Guy. That's me. And today we're going to be going over part two of stage one of the ongoing series that I started last week on what to expect once the MEB process has concluded and you are getting ready to transition back into the civilian world. Last week, I went over part one, which discussed if you had decided to go back into work. And for those of you who don't know, stage one is what goals should you be setting for yourself when you are going through the MEB process and you're getting ready to transition out of the military and figure out what the next steps are for you. So I broke that down into three parts, which we are going over in this first stage, and this is our goal setting stage. And those three parts are either going back to work, retiring, or um, going back to school, getting your education, getting a degree, and then, once you have fulfilled that goal, obviously using that to set on a career path. So today we're going to be discussing retirement. I'm going to be giving you guys kind of the basic criteria or planning guide, if you will, for how to know if you're ready for retirement, what retirement is going to look like, the questions you need to be asking yourselves, and um, the red flags that you need to be aware of that might be telling you that retirement is not something that you should pursue at this time. I'm also going to be giving you guys a list of some states that have ranked very high for military service members who have retired in those states. And of course, if y'all have any questions or if you want more information regarding any of the material that I cover in my videos, make sure to shoot me a message. I will go out and get that additional information and get it back to you. And if y'all have anything that you want me to add to these series or a series that you would like me to construct that you think others might be able to benefit from, shoot those ideas over to me. You can put it in the comment section of these videos. I always put my email link in the description of my videos, and you can contact me that way. It's a private email that I only use for this YouTube channel, and I'm pretty good about getting back to people. So get in touch with me one of those ways, and I will respond as soon as I can. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into this video. Like I said, today we're still in stage one, which is the goal setting stage, and we're doing part two, focusing on retirement. If you decide that retirement is a good option or a good goal for you to pursue when you're getting ready to finish up with the MEB, leave the military, and transition back into the civilian world, and you've decided that retirement is what you want to do. So we're going to hop right into it, guys. I'm going to pull up my notes like I always do. You know how I do. And we're just going to start right at the beginning. So you're getting ready to leave the military. You're considering retirement as an option. I know a lot of soldiers through different ages have chose to retire, and that's a personal choice, and I think it's something that the military kind of allows at least our job title, the military, itself as an organization sets people up, especially disabled veterans, sets us up well. If we want to retire early, we can retire early because we automatically start receiving whatever our disability payments are every month. So I think that that's a good thing. I will say that it is something that I did briefly think about whenever I, got injured and was going through the MEB process. It did cross my mind briefly, But I knew that I was not quite ready for it. I had other things that I wanted to pursue and bigger things that I wanted to accomplish, and I was just too young, and I felt like I had a lot more to offer. I know that that doesn't apply to everybody, but I'm just giving you guys some insight as to, my personal experiences whenever I was going through these stages. But for people who might be trying to determine if they want to retire, I have some information that I pulled up, and basically there's a few key bullets that I want to start off with before we get into them in a little bit further detail. So it says right here, a big one, guys, is to make sure that you are starting your retirement completely debt free. Okay, so if you have student loans, if you have mortgages, if you have car payments, if you have anything that you are making monthly payments on that is going to pull from your savings, because once you retire, you live off of whatever you put away for retirement, whether that's TSP, 401k, a traditional CD, or regular savings funds if you invested in stocks, whatever it is, whatever that accumulated nest egg is, once you retire, that's what you have to resort to primarily, unless you're drawing Social Security or like veteran disability. Your primary source of income at that time is your personal savings and investments. So starting debt free frees up a lot of money that would be spent towards things like mortgages, student loans, that type of thing. So definitely keep that in mind. Um, Also, you want to make sure that you understand that you have access to those funds and that you are at the age where you can access those funds freely without paying 10 to 20% on penalties. So that's another thing. And then another big one is, depending on when you want to retire, what age you want to retire, having a plan as far as health care, how you're going to pay for that health care. Because whenever you, like, it's different for a lot of veterans, because if you have disabilities, you get those disabilities. All that stuff is paid for, through the VA. You might have to pay for things kind of outside of your regular checkups or anything that is not specifically related to a disability that resulted from your time in service. But for the most part, your checkups, your dental and all that stuff um, is taken care of through the VA for the most part. So for us, we don't have to worry about it so much. But for the additional things, you want to make sure that you have already planned into your budget that you're going to pay for additional healthcare services until Medicare and Medicaid fully kick in. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. And those are the main bullets, and I'm going to cover all of them a little bit more in depth. But making sure that your debts are paid off is very, very crucial, because you retire on an understanding of how much money it takes to sustain your quality of living each year. So the more debt that you have, the more payments that you have going out, the more money that you have to save in order to retire with those additional payments. So that's why it's so crucial to get those things taken care of early, prior to retirement, so that retirement you can have a higher quality of retirement in a lower budget, if that makes sense. It says have ample savings. That's kind of a no-brainer. Um, planning for retirement, making sure to save. And I think that what I was looking at was putting it in brackets, depending on when you start saving and when you want to retire, how much you need to retire with. And so basically, what I looked up was the average single American, on average, makes about $35,000 a year. Okay. Now, I know that a lot of people might think that that's high, but I think that it's a good number to start with. And if it is high or if it is low, you can always make these calculations yourself. And then you can use those calculations to determine what your retirement number should be for you to sustain your quality of living. This is something that for every person, is going to be different. So you're going to have to make the budget yourself. But we're just going to use that number, and we're going to say that a married couple without kids, so two adults living in the United States, we're going to say $70,000 because an average of 35 per person is $70,000. Now, what I saw says that you should pursue a nest egg in stages. So by the age of 30, you should have accumulated 1 times whatever your estimated final salary should be. Okay, so let's say that that final salary is $70,000 for your household per year. By the age of 30, you should have accumulated 1 times that, so $70,000. By the age of 40, you should have accumulated 3 times that. Okay, so $210,000. And it goes up and it goes up. And by the age of 67, you should have 10 times that, or $700,000. Okay, so that's what it's saying. It's saying basically, if the average person makes $35,000 a year, and a married couple from the time that both of them were 30 years old to the time that both of them were 67 years old. Keep in mind, it's different for every single group, and this is a very, very basic and generic way to look at it, okay? Because it's not always going to line up perfectly like this. By the time that they're 30, that married couple who's making $70,000 collectively each year should have saved $70,000. By the time they're 67, they should have saved $700,000. Okay? What it's saying is that $700,000 should be enough on top of their, on top of, Social Security, disability, all those things. That should be enough to sustain their current quality of living until they pass away. Another way to think about it is the rule of 25. The rule of 25 says that if you can determine, so like let's say you take into account whatever inflation is and the rise of costs of living and the rise of additional prices, and if you think to yourself, I think what I saw on there is on average, every year people pay 4% more on everything than they did the year prior, okay, on average. So if you can think of that and if you can calculate that, you have to determine how much you spend every year, all right, how much it costs for you to buy your life for a year, if you want to think of it that way. Then you have to calculate how much it's going to cost each year after that to kind of get an idea of what it looks like when you're like 67. And there's formulas you can use online to, calculate what that number would be in however many years. You just have to Google that. It's not very hard. But basically what you want to do is you want to take the number you started with and you want to use the math to get to what that number could potentially look like in however many years, if you want to retire in. It doesn't have to be 67. Then what that number is, how much it costs during that year for you to have the life that you have. You have to multiply that by 25. And in order to retire, you need 25 times that number to sustain yourself from. Now that's based on a person that retires at 67. Okay, you might have to do some research to determine how many times you have to add that value on each year that you decide to retire, if you want to retire early. And you can do it the same way forward. If you don't want to retire at 67, but you want to retire at 70, you can have less of that amount, if that makes sense. But those are two pretty simple ways of looking at it. You either want 10 times your final household salary or 25 times your final expenses. And that is what has been suggested to allow the, average American to retire successfully and to be comfortable until they pass away. I know that's a pretty grim way to look at it, but that's what I was seeing online. And basically, I'm just going to go through the rest of this kind of quick. Can you get at your savings without acquiring penalties? Basically, it's just going over, when you retire. Make sure that you have access to it. Depending on when you retire, you might have to pay penalties. If you're going to pay penalties, wait a little while. You can still retire, but allow the 401k and the TSP to continue to grow until it gets to the age that you can have access to it without paying those penalties. Make sure that your health care is covered. If it's not covered, put into your budget that you're going to pay out of pocket for those additional healthcare services prior to Medicare kicking in. Then your budget. Okay, can you live off of your budget? That's a pretty simple step, but I think it's also something that a lot of people do not plan well. A budget is not bare minimum. Like, if you're going to sit down and you're going to say, these are my expenses, therefore my expenses equal what I need to live, that is not a very great way to look at it. That is a strategy that is going to typically fail. And that is because there are a lot of unknowns. You always have to plan more. Because when you retire and you're done working, you never know, like, let's say you got kids. You never know whenever one of your kids are going to have an issue and you have to help one of your kids and you have to dip into your savings. You never know when one of your animals are going to get extremely sick, an animal that you've had for a long time, and you just have to take them in, and blah blah, and insurance won't cover everything, and you don't know. Okay, and you cannot bank on a level budget that exactly matches what your expenses are to sustain you for an extended period of time, because it's not going to work. It's typically going to fail, and you're setting yourself up to get behind, and you cannot get behind in your retirement, because whenever you start taking more and more that you didn't plan for inside your budget, that is going to eventually put you in a situation that you're not going to want to be in, and then your quality of living and your desired retirement is no longer going to be a possibility. So just keep that in mind, guys. I'm sorry for how long this video is. I'm trying to speed up a little bit. Have a plan. Determine when you want to retire. Kind of what we said earlier. depending on when you want to retire, you have to calculate how much money you're going to need. The earlier you retire, the more money that you need, because you need more money to pay for more years of life without work. So make the plan, determine the age, figure out what that number is, and then come up with a savings plan to get you to that number by that designated time. Pretty simple. Okay, just going to run through these real quick. These are ranked. They are ranked as the 10 best states for veterans to retire in. I'm sure that there's multiple websites you can visit for this, and that each website has them ranked differently. But just something that if one of these shouts out to you, go and research it yourself. Determine what the benefits are. Determine, what all that looks like. Number 10, New Hampshire. Number 9, Missouri. Number 8, Wyoming. Number 7, Maryland. Number 6, Alabama. Number 5, Alaska. I ain't gonna lie, guys. I might would want to live in Alaska. Alaska sounds pretty nice. Number 4, South Dakota. Number 3, Florida. That's where I'm at right now. Number 2, South Carolina. And number 1, the top state, the United States, Virginia. So if you're living in Virginia and you like living in Virginia and you want to retire, hey, your job's that much easier. You're living in what's, so-called, been named the number 1 state for veterans to retire. But guys, that's really all I got for you today. Another thing that I wanted to tell you guys is that if you did invest into your TSP, there are a couple of things that you might want to check into. Number 1, I think TSP is great. Number 2, gain access to your TSP, okay? Because there's so much more you can do from the actual website that you can't really do from MyPay. You can go on MyPay, you can go into TSP, you can set up your contributions, whatever and whatever. But you can't really manipulate the percentages in the funds that you want to invest in, right? You can set up a plan and whatever, and you can call, and their phone service is not great, but whatever. I suggest requesting the account, requesting the your temporary password, going in there, personalizing your account. I've been playing around with TSP for several years now, and it's great. I invested early, made sure to make my contributions, and once I go back to work, I'll do 401k and all that stuff. But there's just so much more you can do, and you can go in and you can read about the funds and see how they've been performing over the last year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and you can see what the averages are, and you can determine how much risk you want to take and when you want to take those risks. So the way I'm doing it now, I'm doing things a little bit more risky than what I'm probably going to do when I'm 50 years old, because I'm at the point to where I'm okay taking a little risk in order to get more reward. But once I get 50, I'll make those changes and this, that, and the other. But definitely do that. Also, you guys need to look into, if you're doing a 401k or other retirement programs, you need to look into holding fees, how much the holding fees are at that company. So basically what a holding fee is every year, you're automatically going to be charged a certain percentage of how much you have invested in your retirement through that company for them to continue to hold that money. And with TSP is, I believe, the lowest holding fee of anybody. I believe so. So what you want to do is you want to check both companies, and you want to see which one of them have different holding fees. Because let's say that let's say you retired, you got injured, left the military, medically retired, went back to work. You was in the military for 15 years. You started your TSP is growing. Then you go back to work, and let's say you were 35. You go back to work, you retire at 55 from that company, and you had 401k with them. That company's holding fee is 3 times as much as what is over at TSP through savings plan. You can request, and some companies do this, once you leave the company, once you have retired, you can request that they move over your 401k and it gets transitioned into the TSP, and the TSP will hold it at a lower holding fee. And you can request that it does that without a penalty as long as you're leaving the company and you're retiring from the company. It's different for every company. Some companies don't allow you to do that. Some companies do. TSP will allow money to migrate from one retirement program to their program. However, once you leave the military, you can't make what's known as contributions into your TSP account anymore. However, I believe you can still request that you move money from like a 401k or a different retirement program into the TSP. I know that because they have a lower holding fee, I've talked to people who like have done things like that, and you'll just have to talk to your company. You'll have to get on a TSP, and you'll have to see like what the process is for that. But it's something to look into because those holding fees, they can add up, and any way that you can save money, that's just more money you're going to get to retire with. So, but guys, thank you for watching this video today. I'm sorry it ran a little long. I tried to keep it as short as possible. I hope that you guys enjoyed the content and that you're benefiting from the content. Stay tuned for next week. Next week, we'll be going over our third and final part of this first stage, goal setting stage, which will be education. It's going to be a good one because it's the path that, I chose. So hopefully I know what I'm talking about, and I can give you guys some interesting facts and information that will help guide you along that path. Until then, guys, as always, just remember that even if you don't realize it, even if you don't believe it, there's a warrior in every single one of you, and I see it. Take care.